There you go. Maybe it was the last one in. That was strange. Anyway, we're recording.
Thank you. Thanks. So thanks to those of you and welcome who are joining us for the recording. We are here with Mel Geltch from Campfire and the lovely ladies of the Wise Women Rising to explore this question around co-ops. And the reason that it's come up for me to invite Mel and to ask her to join us today is because I've had this sense from early conversations with Shez and Irene and Kat, and I can remember one particularly where Mel joined us in Hawthorne and we had a day where we did some groundwork, and at that day there was a conversation about what sort of structure, and it was actually up on the groundwork map that we had. It was like, it's a question, what sort of structure would we imagine if we were going to imagine going forward? And there was some energy then about the co-op structure, as I remember it. And I think there was also some question about going to non-profit status, or there was just questions like, how do we do this as an organisation, as a community organisation? And the reason it had come up initially was because I think Kat had said, well, there's funds around. If we structure, we can apply for funding. And at the time it was like, well, we're not ready for that. And I still think even from the retreat, we're not quite ready for that. But I do see that in the next 12 months, we might be starting to be ready for that in terms of developing a structure and having a willing team to set up that core to begin to develop our structure. So that's sort of where we're at. The retreat was an incredible experience of possibility and where we might be if we continue to hold the community with love and care and continue to evolve it as having some structure so that we can plan and we can bring more about in terms of our intentions for more retreats and more activities that will support women to rise. That's at the heart of it, the precious work of wise women. So thank you, Mel. And I suppose I will say that because of that session with you back then last year, we do have needs at the heart, the safe, empathic place to belong, contribute and thrive. We do have the needs and the purpose around midwifing our precious work. So there's a clarity there at the centre of the organisation as a purpose-driven community, which is helpful. I think already. I think that's if there's any structure at all, it's that holds the centre. So yeah, that's it from me. Is there anything that anyone else would like to add? Shez, would you like to add in terms of setup and sort of sharing where we're up to?
No, I think you've covered it. I mean, there's the other structure of the what we're doing, calls and, technology and, there's other bits of structure as well. But
well, that's true. There's the...
organisationally.
Yeah, and there's the time bank that we've already got set up. So yeah, there's some in the culture, which is around MVC. There's some in the structure, which is about what and the how that we're living. Mm-hmm. And there's some in the strategic in terms of looking forward and seeing more opportunities for, special events and International Women's Day next year. There's sort of some pictures of what's possible, and there's cultural, structural, practical. And there's practical things that are happening all the time. So yeah, in terms of groundwork, we've got stuff in each of the quadrants. And the resource question at the bottom, actually I've applied the wellbeing model to the resources area. So it's financial, but it's also financial, social, like that's overlaps with cultural, but anyway, I don't need to go there now, but there's a broad resources base of, how we use our time, how we navigate things in a more relational way from right brain to left brain, and or left brain to right brain, and how we hold the fabric. So yeah, okay. So did I ask my question? I don't think I asked my question about where we are in transition and what had co-op be alive for you as a structure in response to what was happening in your organization at the time. Thanks, Mel.
Yeah, thank you. I was thinking about like calling questions first, but I imagine what I say will spark questions. So my intention is to speak for maybe 10 minutes max if I can, and then open. I get very passionate about this. So it's like tend to go on. Yeah, so the co-ops, when I think about this is just the legal structure, you know. Of course there are other structures that support, but what's our question was, we knew we were already in the practice of how we wanted to be as an organization when we were starting out. But because we didn't come from a network, we came from a let's create an organization we want to work in. That was our call to do our work in the world, like as a container for our work in the world. So it was potentially a different way in. So we, you know, looked at all of the, inquired into all those things, and then it was like, what is a legal structure within the current paradigm that most fits how we want to be? Because there is, and I would say there's nothing perfect. So because we're working, you know, whether you call it reinventing organization or next stage organizations, or being more human in organizations, whatever it is like, that's what we wanted. That was our focus. We never went to organization, legal structure first. It was like, what's the structure that can support us best? And being really honest is that co-ops was the best of a pretty
bad lot
bunch. And I just want to give this context, which is very different for what you're facing, is that we cooperatived in Queensland. I don't think that's a word. But, up until very, very recently, Queensland was operating out of really archaic, and still is until, legislation regarding co-ops from 1991. Whereas the rest of Australia has been operating under the National Cooperatives Law for some time, different. So we knew this when we started. And so there were way more barriers for us than there would be for you. This has since changed just this year. And part of our intention was to help cooperatives be more available to Queenslanders. I hope that it could push. I wouldn't say we were responsible by any means, but hopefully our energetic played a part in that changing of the law. And I think some things are still relevant, because while there's this kind of, there's a small part of, you know, the zeitgeist or the energy that recognises co-ops as, you know, something new and funky, and there's all of these co-ops showing up, and basically in day-to-day life, nobody sees co-ops and nobody understands co-ops. Like, and I don't mean to say that to dishearten. It's kind of the reality is that, and which is part of the reason why we were attracted to it, right? It was, so even the tax office doesn't know how to kind of, it's like, oh, right, okay. They don't mention us whenever, as an operating structure. It's always like, you know, individual or, you know, partnership or company. It's not front and center. So you have to kind of dig. Yeah, you have to be really wanting it in a sense. And I know that I'm coming through the Queensland screen of that. So I'm just trying not look to the screen. I just wonder if, just because I get distracted by the chat when it pops up, I'll try and not look at it. Yeah, so it was the best fit for us. And basically, you know, I mean, I don't want to go into history and the principles and practices and values of co-ops. They really the best fit how we wanted to be. And we also got some good advice from our Department of Fair Trading saying that within the structure is pretty free. So we operate, like we have our rules for officialdom, but within that, we have so much freedom. We can be as next stage as we want, right, within that environment. And that for us was great. It's like we have to jump through a lot of hoops when it comes to reporting, not so much in other states. We have to be audited, as well as like there's extra layers. That's certainly not true under national cooperatives law. But and I guess I'm starting with the barriers, but it's because I guess it's the reality, is that be prepared to be questioned and to be misunderstood or not understood. I mean, which is great, because then we get to be, raising consciousness around cooperatives, which was one of our intentions. Is that there's this structure that, you know, how do we enliven it like it has been in the UK? And how do we form a different kind of organisation within it? So, yeah, like member owned was the way we wanted to be. And we also got to make some choices, and realistically we had no money to start up. We needed to do it now. So we chose the most simple way, which for us was a non-trading cooperative without shares. And there are 4 different types. There's trading with shares, trading without shares, then there's non-trading with shares and non-trading without shares. And we chose the simplest one, which is non-trading without shares. So our members pay a fee, which we set in our rules. And yeah, so maybe the only other thing I just say about what we chose with our rules is that they don't reflect how we operate in reality. And for us to do that at the start, when we didn't even know what was going to emerge, for us to sort of stray too far from the typical rules of how boards operate and all of those things, we would have had a tough time getting it approved. So we were advised to go with, you know, the model rules kind of thing. And then if we felt like it was necessary at some point to then employ legal advice and go through that long thing of re-energizing our rules and getting them approved that actually suit who we've become. So that was a decision that we made, yeah, when we set up. Yeah, and there's just some easier paths for you, so I won't go into what we it's not applicable, but yeah, that was what was alive at the time and why we chose a co-op, because there's no way we wanted to be a company. And at the time, we didn't want to be a not-for-profit either. We wanted to show how we could earn an honourable living. Like we could be a more than for-profit, you know, or for-purpose business, if you like. That NGOs are not the only place where purposeful work happens, and that we wanted to support an honourable living for everyone in the co-op. So that was conscious, and as it's turned out, we're now recognised by the ATO as a not-for-profit, because all of our money goes back in, like our excess money of how we run goes back in. And we haven't yet gone down the road of being officially becoming a not-for-profit, and we don't know whether we do yet. So that's a whole other thing, but we don't have to do tax returns at the end of the year, which is beautiful. So yeah, that's kind of where it started, and I'll just open up for questions.
Thank you, Mel. I already have a number in my head. I have quite a lot of like stirred curiosity now. But I just want to open to the room first before I jump in. Do you want to share your questions, Barbara, that you've put in the chat?
Sure, and sorry for doing that and distracting you, Mel, but so let's see, what did I put? What was coming up for me was what makes the co-op the best fit. And what I heard you say was that you wanted it to be a place where you could earn a purposeful, honorable living, so actually making money, and that it wasn't just not-for-profits you wanted to see. Was there other things that made co-op a best fit?
Yeah, not-for-profit wasn't necessarily our option. We were looking in the commercial realm, as is old paradigm thinking, right? So within the limited structures, there was nothing. There's no structure that actually really supports what we're trying to do. But the co-op best fits because its principles and values are aligned. That's as simple as it is like there's the principles, like it almost enforces us. Like we commit to co-op principles. We are here for the members, for the community, and we have the added thing of the planet. But there's a compulsion. You must do work in the community. So there's something about that that's, yeah, so it spoke in its structure something that's dear to us, and none of the other structures really hold principle based, I guess, except for maybe some commercial things, which is about for profit as the essential principle. And that's certainly what is not at the center for us. So it was the best fit as far as alignment.
Yeah, thanks. What comes up for me hearing that again is this, I guess historically having had a picture in my mind, very similar to what the time banks have, or the sort of alternative currencies area has, is pictures of markets with fruit and veggies, and sort of co-ops getting together to trade eggs, and like I have this real farm-based original picture of what where a co-op has come from. And when I went and did a little bit of research, I saw the inklings of where a co-op could reinvent itself, like how a co-op could stand up today and be in service of the emerging types of community arrangements, almost like joint ventures that have become deeply embedded into a community structure. And one of the things that really stands out from my originally hearing you share about this, Mel, was something that you said about, yeah, we were already working in a way that it was the last business I ever wanted to be in, is I think how you said it, but it was like, we want to build a structure that honors the friendships and the work, and I don't want another job, is what you said. This is the way I want to live and work, and I want to build a fabric or a structure that just holds how we want to live and work. And that for me was that's where the inspiration hit me. And then that was the sort of motivation to go, well, what would a new co-op look like? I mean, gosh, we're a new time bank. I don't think there's ever been a time bank like Wise Women Rising before, in terms of the way we've taken that idea and started to apply it differently. And I think there's a motivation in me to be alongside you in that curiosity of how can a co-op stand up today in service to the way that we might like to live and work, and how we might shape the rules to be more in service to how we want to live. So Yeah, would you say a bit more about perhaps what inspires you forward for Campfire? Like perhaps, I don't know if everyone here knows very much about Campfire. Perhaps would you give us a few minutes about Campfire and about what you're doing that would be in service to seeing that inspiration of like where you could go? Does it make sense?
Pardon?
Does it make sense?
Yeah, and it makes sense. I'm just Google how to.
Yeah.
In like, if I speak in plain language, it doesn't really, like, we're consultants basically. Yeah, that's at its essence. We're participatory designers, hosts, harvesters, helping let's say whoever feels invited to work in a radically different way. And I know that some of you know the practices that we have some pillars of for our organisation of the art of hosting, conversations that matter, and groundwork, which is what you're familiar with, and self-organisation are our kind of three pillars of pillars of practice, I guess, pillars of practice. So we're a distributed team. We began with a member in Europe, but we retracted instead of grew. It was just who showed up, right? And that was just, it was a bit too tough. And we feel strongly at the moment that we're Australian, and a lot of us are regionally based. So it's like, how do we be in our communities and be in service to our communities? And even more so now, like even more so. I was traveling quite a bit and that's stopped clearly. And so for necessity, it's a strong collaborative based organization. So it's more than a loose network of independent consultants going off and doing their thing, that recognizing that the combined gifts that we each bring and the desire to be in long, slow, lasting change as in partnership with like walking alongside communities or organizations, and that requires, like, one of our, I guess, basic tenets is that we're better together, is that we need to work together like never before. And there's a strong thing for us is that if we go out and, spruik those things and say things and introduce those concepts to other people, that we need to be walking our talk on a very deep conscious level. So, yeah, we're practicing collaboration. So the more people that work in projects together, the more practiced we are. Like it's almost like it's a practice field. So it's not just about the external work, and that shifts and changes about where the focus is, but how we show up in our organization is the work. Almost the external work is also the work, but it's not about equal, but it matters. It really matters. Like, it's a practice field. This is where we get to learn and be in relationships. So probably not answering your question, but it's not, there's no destination. Like, I guess there's no destination for us. It's just about being in practice. And my hope is that, and I think that's shared, is that we do more longer term deep work than one-off kind of engagement. My thing is that I don't want to do engagement for people. I would love for people to learn how to do that engagement themselves in their own community. So building capacity is a really strong desire. So however that shows up, and there was something else that felt important to say. Yeah, it's gone for now. So I'll ease in.
I think you did answer the question in terms of inspiration. I have the sense that working in organizations where the practice and the capacity building happens internally as much as it does in terms of contribution, I think that is the inspiration that moves me to look at co-op as a structure too, because I see the key things here for me are longer term relationship, actually looking at not just as you've described it, those sporadic projects, you know, whiz in as a consultant, blow things up, whiz out again sort of strategies which have been used in the past. I think relational, longer term, supportive, evolving states of inquiry are really these learning organizations that I'm really have said a number of times. I believe we're in a co-learning environment and a co-learning organization. And so that's sort of that collaborative shared ownership of what are we learning, how are we applying, what can we harvest from what we've just experienced, how does it lead us forward? Like there's all this sort of inquiry of the human dimension, how we're supporting each other really as we evolve, because I tell myself that perhaps one of the things that I've personally experienced in already the 18 months of being an organization is that you do have challenges in the interpersonal realm. And if we're real about that, then we can build a structure that actually embeds like ways of seeing conflict as generative, as a support to the evolution, because where there's difference, there's possibility of evolving some new understanding, like ways of being with the unfolding of our own personal journeys as much as being together, and having a sense of like, we're not just loosely fitting together so that if it gets a bit hard, we're off. Something more substantial. I think this is the meatiness that a co-op structure gives us, you know, and this is about the commitments we each make to be involved in the unfolding. Not only I think it serves personal evolution, but it serves the precious work we're intending to contribute. And I think that's why it means so much to me, is that as we personally grow, we grow our work and our capacity to show up, to be guides for the new future, or whatever the sense of our contribution is. I'm telling myself I've rambled there a bit, but I think it is the inspiration of having a structure that holds the relationships with clarity so that we can do our work in both the interpersonal realm and in the work in the world way. So yeah, that, back to you.
So yes, all of that. And the co-op structure doesn't necessarily, that's our work, that's your work. I know co-ops to be very hierarchical, top down, you know, like, and I know lots of NGOs, most of them actually, that are, you know, power over. And so, so for me, it's like what happens within is what really counts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that the other thing is that membership of a co-op is a commitment. It's like, once you're in, you're in. You're a co-owner of the organization. So I guess what's happened for us is that our structure within the structure, the legal structure, which is really, it's kind of by the by, really. Like it's, our board is not, we have a core team. Most people can't even remember who's on the board, you know, it's like whatever. It's literally like, that's the way we treat it. is that the wisdoms within the, within the membership. Because boards have become toxic in their own way. It's like, so we have a board because we must, but we only have 2 members on it at the moment, maximum 3. We wrote that into our rules. So it's like, it's really to sign the papers, to be there. But we all hold the responsibility. We have that in different structure. So we have structure within. And I say this because Kate's just going to come on it as a supporter in our organisation, not as a member. It's like we have structures within the organisation that allows different levels, and it's acknowledging that everyone's in different spaces and capacity, and how do they move in and out? How do we move in and out to meet those needs of life? And we're really, really conscious. We've learned to be very conscious about who becomes a member of the organisation. Is this really for you? Because, I mean, you can get out of it, of course, and the way that legally you do it is not the way that we do it. So yeah, it just brings consciousness and just allowing for lightest possible structure within or without the co-op structure that we can do. Like, we can have a supporter ring. It's not within the rules, but who says that we can't do that? Is that I want to? So we don't focus so much on it for us.
I'm glad that you bring up.
We own it, but that's not really our central focus, I guess.
Thank you. Sorry, I stepped in on you. My brain's ticking with you mentioning the sort of ways that you do structure underneath or inside of the legal structure. And I'm remembering you drawing circles of teams, that you had a wellbeing team and another team and that what I'm hearing is that the board structure, it surprises me that there's only 2 and up to 3 on the board. But I could sort of see that making sense, that it would, in terms of effectiveness and efficiency, to be able to get things done, like signing documents, if there's not 8 of you to have to sign the document or to ratify a decision, it could just expedite some of those structural things, but there's more than one person committed to being that decision maker. So there's actually, as an organisation, those 3 become in service, or those 2 or 3 become in service of the decisions that the whole group makes. So I'm getting that it's really just, they're the ones where the pen meets the paper sort of thing, but essentially that the organisation as a whole designs its own hubs, like we're doing at the moment, is dividing into smaller hubs where we can co-create and be accountability buddies for each other and so on. And my sense is that then the groups all come together at a couple of times a year to look at organizational level questions. So my memory is that you as an organization, as Campfire as an organization, gets together once a year, or was doing in person, getting together once a year. Is it at that time that you make decisions on organization-wide choices, or how do you do that in terms of making decisions for the organization?
So the members make decisions, not the board. So we're all equal co-owners. So we have monthly governance meetings. We call them fireside chats. Yeah. So every month people bring proposals, and that can shift at any time. And that's where we use generative decision making for that. So we don't use what's written in the rules. We don't use, Robert's or whatever it is, I don't even know that. It's so boring, the old ways of meetings. We do that monthly. So we have rhythms of meetings, and we have work teams that work in sort of small triangles to work things done and we're empowered to do things and make decisions within our own. But we have a couple of decision-making processes. So it's only strategic or governance decisions that are made that impact the whole that are brought to the fireside chats. The teams are empowered to make decisions and individuals are empowered to make decisions. But that's less about co-op structure. It's nothing about co-op structure, and it's more about our process and structure. And yeah, so those teams meet as they need to. And then twice a year we meet for a retreat. And then twice this year we've had to cancel our face-to-face retreat and go online. And we have it in a couple of weeks. So we usually meet for 5 days, face-to-face, twice a year. I would like to meet 3 times a year because we're so disparate. We're all across Eastern Australia. Geographically, that is critically important. And so we're navigating how to do that. And fortunately, we've got some good practices of, like, as you do, about how to be in relationship online. So it's not the board. We don't, that's what I said about the structures there, but we don't take any notice of it. Like, seriously, we don't. And people go, oh, risk. And it's like, everyone who co-owns this organisation has an investment and cares deeply about it. So why would we outsource that to someone else? We also have Wisdom Council, which we think in the old terms, what boards would have been for organisations, but they're not that anymore. So we have Wisdom Council for our organisation and for projects that we consciously call in. There's nothing legal about it. It's just like who holds us. So we stretch the envelope probably, and we intend to and want to. So that's what I mean about co-op structures there, and you have to jump through some hoops every year and, you know, document things, which we do anyway really well. We're conscious about, you know, radical transparency. Everything's just like default to open. So there's nothing about it not being above board. It's just that we just do our own thing within that legal framework according to the powers that be. So
it seems to me that co-op gives you that more choice to do that than other structures. I'm going to guess that in some way it partners with that autonomy from structure in some ways that other structures may not. I just want to say, you know, that I think there's some real curiosity here coming up for me about, okay, so I can start to hear the structure that is actually working for you as you share. I can hear the monthly sort of, I can't remember what you called them, like organizational type level, what did you call them?
She called them governance. Meetings, but she said we call them fireside chats.
Yeah, thank you.
And people bring proposals.
Yeah, that, and I hear that there's that governance, and that in those meetings you're really looking at the strategic and the whole of organisation or the whole of community questions, and that other than that, everybody's empowered in their teams in their hubs to make their own decisions, to navigate their own independent decision making. So it's actually that there's embedded trust, which is what emerging organizations, the sort of reinventing organizations are founded in, re-establishing trust in the organization for each other and for our learning and for the empowering everybody to make decisions. And I see that as fundamentally important. And then the learning that comes out of that be shared, so that I tell myself that part of the reason we get bogged down in hierarchy and administrative levels of reporting and cumbersome levels of administrative reporting is because there hasn't been trust. And that, you know, moving forward, we want to be freer of the red tape and freer of those sort of levels of administrative reporting in many ways. But actually, we want to bring back the harvesting. So it's still reporting in inverted commas, but it's more the harvesting and the co-learning, and there's sort of an emotional quality to the let's come back and find out together, rather than you have to have this report on my desk by this time. And like it moves into trust. It moves into autonomy in the structure that allows for that quality of the feedback that's the most powerful for the organization to keep learning with and keep unfolding. So I'm really enjoying the Wisdom Council idea too. And I've sort of had that, use the words Wisdom Council a couple of times inside some conversations I've had recently. And Wisdom Council to me had this quality of maybe something about a board and maybe something about people outside the organization that had perspective, so that they weren't actually actively involved in the organization, but they would come and sit around the outside with their areas of expertise and inform us, give us a mirror back, and like, this is where we are, how is, you know, what does your area of expertise bring that could inform us about where we are? Would you say that the Wisdom Council is that for you? Are they outside the organisation? Is that what I'm understanding? And that you bring their expertise to inform, and support the organisation? Is that how it is?
Yeah. They're kind of our elders in the art of hosting practice, and we invite them in to host tough conversations. We recognise that they're invited to retreats. They're, and that's the way they like it, right? They don't want to be involved in the day-to-day. They just want to support us, right? And be part of it without having all care, no responsibility sort of thing. Yes. So I'm just wondering, I wanted to share the guide. I think I've shared this with certainly Kate's seen it, but I'm just going to put it in the chat, which is kind of our most current and always shifting kind of high level everything. And also, Barbara, I just want to share with you, if I can, is upload a picture, which is I have to upload it and then share.
Yeah,
it shows the structure. I'll just do that now.
Okay, that's great. I'm seeing it's already 7 minutes to 12, so I'm wanting to just hear everyone's voice as a checkout to say anything that's still alive for you to say and to share. I'm wondering who would like to start.
I'd like to voice a question. Oh, sorry, Sherry.
I know some people are leaving. Is this call continuing a little bit longer, or are we actually ending it now, just for clarity?
Mel was one of the women who needed to go right on 12.
Then it's, yes, fair enough. Thank you.
Over to you, Jennifer.
Oh, it's a question I put in the chat, which was, I'm wondering around, would Campfire consider perhaps mentoring Wise Women Rising as an emerging organisation that's actually trying to, I think, which has very aligned principles and values. And by mentoring, I guess I'm not trying to make that a big piece of work, but more of an opportunity perhaps to come in and have those conversations and share some of the models and around the design that's worked for them. And no, I also understand that you don't need to answer that straight away. You may want to take it back and have discussion around it.
Yeah, I don't need to take it away. It's like, yes, of course. Like, and whichever level is useful. And what I hope it would be is that, yes, I appreciate that we're some way along in that you are also some way along, is that it could be peer mentoring relationship. We have something called allies in our structure. I don't know, you can see in that picture, is that I already, like in my heart, in our heart and minds, Wise Women Rising is already an ally of us. And I mean, we've done something similar with the Grove a little bit in Sydney, but it's actually part of a mandate as a co-op, is that you share. But more than that, even beyond the mandate, it's like, you want to, like, of course, yeah, like, let's be in learning. So yes, the answer, of course, is yes.
Brilliant, thank you.
Who else would like to jump in? Yes, Helen.
Oh, I have what I think is a quick question. Mel, what was the time frame roughly from when you decided that co-ops was the best of a bad bunch, I think you referred to it as, to actually get it what you would call, you know, operating? And my second part of that quick question was, how much energy, time, whatever resources is required for the operationalizing it now, or is it pretty much run itself? And I know that you've said that there's a lot of organic work that is taking place that is you know, what you decide as you go along, that doesn't actually relate or need to relate specifically to the co-op structure. Thanks.
So set up probably, we decided in early January, and we were operating, I think we were incorporated and had to wait to get our bank account. You know, you can't operate a bank account. I think it was 3 months, and that was like, we stretched as we had to jump through a lot of hoops. We had to go through ASIC to register in other states, which you wouldn't have to do. So, but yeah, the registration process, and you have special meetings, about 3 months. So now that stuff is just annual reporting. And now hopefully we don't have to get audited again. But finding an accountant that understood co-ops was another challenge. Finding a bank that understood us. So that's the other thing, is just you go down a bit of a rabbit hole, but it's consciousness, right? It's like, anyway. But now not much of our stuff is spent on co-op stuff, the governance stuff. It's really only kind of once a year. But I would say daily we're paying attention to our organisation, because our thing is like, how do we bring more consciousness into everything? So nothing is done, and it's hard. Like it's beautiful work, but it's easier just to take whatever organisations have been doing forever and just to bring it in. But that's not what we're about. So that's our choice. That's absolutely our choice. And things get easier and flow, and then other things come up. It's like we go a bit deeper. It's like we're a living organism. So it's yeah.
Thanks, Mel. That was really good. Thanks.
Yeah.
Kate, to you, is there anything?
No, not really. I mean, I'm really appreciative of hearing the conversation. And just really realizing that legal structure, you know, I grapple with this in even just your like Storytelling Australia Victoria. It's like the legal structure's kind of irrelevant to how we kind of do stuff, how we talk to each other, how we relate, how we run our meetings. And yeah, so it's nice to have that confirmed, because those rules and those structures really trip us all up and suck us in. But in reality, they're kind of irrelevant. They're a legal requirement. So yeah, but thank you for organising it, Karen, and yeah, thanks, Mel.
Thanks, Kate. Barbara.
Thank you so much, Mel. And I could really resonate with that. It's hard work to do it differently. And to choose to do that. And I'm finding that with our co-housing group, like we are choosing to do decisions by consensus and give every woman a full voice. Whoa, it's so exhausting. It's really worth doing. And it's great to find, it's always so fun for me to find fellow people who are willing to put in the effort to do it differently. So thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. Shez, did you want to come back and contribute before we check right on 12?
Right, yeah, no. Well, I just did have a very quick question about decision-making process. Is there any particular method that you use? Just interested in that.
I might answer that and check out at the same time.
Sure.
That's a whole other, we could spend another hour of
Yes. Okay.
We use generative decision making, which comes from, I can share a link to that.
Yep, that'd be great. Thank you.
Which is kind of like adapted from sociocracy and holocracy, and it's a postinged, used by yeah. So and
posting.
We also use the I think our decision making stuff is in the guide that I sent the link in the chat.
Great.
Yeah. We also use the advice process, which is requires high trust, which is just, you know, you make a decision and you just need to ask advice for people who are most impacted or have some knowledge or understanding, and you can have what you want after you've listened to that. You can go ahead and spend whatever it is that you want, right? We haven't, in practice, I think in reality, that's a whole other story of people's confidence to do that.
Yes.
That's, yeah, but it's consent based. It's not consensus. So it's of, you know, everyone gets a voice, but also like good enough for now. It's like, it's kind of beyond, I won't say beyond consensus. It's just, consent based.
I imagine there might be a bit more flow and movement if you're not trying to get a full consensus, because that can slow things down.
Yeah, so it's not agreement, 100% agreement. It's like, is this safe enough to try? Is this, you know, for now. And then that's emergent. It sort of fits in with our emergent practice, I guess.
Yeah.
And thank you. So just, every time I speak about this, I always get more out of it. Like, you know, like I understand more of the story in sharing it. And I'm so interested. So there's this thing I talked with Samantha Slade about from Percolab, and it's like, as many organisations as we can nurture to be more conscious and do things differently, like as many. So, you know, like that's why it was such a clear yes. It's like, I want you to do, you know, to do well and shine, like so many different examples, living examples. We don't all have to be the same, and we don't want to be the same because it's not possible. So but to create a culture, like a growing crop of co-ops. Absolutely, or whatever, even co-ops, it doesn't matter.
Or structures that operate in this kind of conscious way.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mel. I'm loving the decision-making question, and I think it would be lovely to come back to that, and maybe by the end of the year we could organise another touch base in terms of that. I would love that so much. And yes, to our shared intentions for conscious raising in our organisations. Thank you so much for the time today. Thanks everyone for being here and supporting us.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye, Mel.
Nice to see you.
Bye, love.
Ciao.